Hello, good evening. I'm Oral Gibbs, and welcome to Oral Gibbs Live, coming to you live here from World Star Studios at Amsterdam Shopping Center. And with me this evening, I have, for the first time this year, none other than the leader of the Democratic Party and Member of Parliament, Mrs. Sarah Westcott. How are you doing?
Good evening, Oral. I'm doing wonderful, thank you, and a good evening to all our viewers out there.
And, it's, I was going to say, Madam Prime Minister.
I know.
I'm trying not to make that mistake this evening. But how has it been? Now you're a member of Parliament and you're in there, and how are things going?
Oral, it's surely a different cup of tea, as we would say, and. But I have approached it with the same seriousness that I approached the position of Prime Minister, albeit that they're two completely different functions. One on the executive level, that's the Prime Minister, and the other one, Member of Parliament, is on the legislative level. And of course, the new Parliament was installed on the 10th of October. And then we had a very peculiar situation for a little over 2 months. And I and two other ministers were at the same time also a member of Parliament. And so during that period of time, it was a very strange situation. But we needed to do that because the new government was not formed until the 19th of December. However, by or following the 19th of December and the installation of the new government, and then I could have taken off the hat of Prime Minister, I totally involved myself with the position of being a member of Parliament. But it's totally different. The whole operation is different, and but I enjoy it. I enjoyed it on an executive level, Prime Minister, but also as a member of Parliament. I believe there's so much that the Parliament of St. Martin still has to do, can do. I stated from day one that I believe the Parliament of St. Martin should function much more independently. Too often you see where Parliament would sort of sit back, albeit that things have changed in this new Parliament, but you would have seen where Parliament would sit back and wait on something to come from government or something to happen. And then you would hear members of Parliament or factions speak out. And we often speak of Parliament as the legislative body, which it is. You can't have a law passed unless it's passed by Parliament. That's a formal law. We call them ordinances. You can call them bills. You can call them acts. But our law, what we call a law, is established by Parliament. But there is a misconception about the coming into beings of laws that govern all of the people on St. Martin. And people always say, but why doesn't Parliament come with this law or that law? Other than people generally feel, Parliament usually does not initiate laws and the process to come to a law. It is government that does that, prepares the proposal, prepares the law.
To the ministers, in other words.
Yes, exactly. And then it will come to Parliament for debate and either ratification or not. Yes, a member, one or more members of Parliament can come with what is called an initiative draft law. So a member can propose a law, formulate it and propose it. But that is more exception than it is rule. Normally, draft laws come from government, from the ministers, and it has to go through the procedure that a law needs to go through. Advice needs to be had from the Council of Advice and those kind of things. You know, so the legislative function of Parliament is usually to receive draft laws, debate them, handle them, pass them, or reject them. Outside of that, you have basically two groups in Parliament. One group would be the members supporting the government, and they have to approach issues in a slightly different way. And the other group would be those in opposition, and they then have to approach their role, their job differently as well.
Now, you was the first Prime Minister of St. Martin. You survived all of the...
Yeah.
And there was no blueprint to say, well, this is how
True.
it was done.
True.
Now that you're out and you're looking in from the outside, is there anything that you would have done differently?
Well, I couldn't really think of something that I would have done differently. But as you indicated, for much of it, it was a learning process, learning as you or as I went. But, you know, and there was so much that came along with being the government as of 10-10-10, completely new status. I think feeling our way in terms of how the Council of Ministers operated versus the independent operation of ministers, I believe that that was one of the biggest challenges. Today, sometimes you hear people say, but why is the Member of Parliament referring to me? Why is she speaking out on an issue now? And she would not in the past. Of course, I spoke out on these issues in the past, but I would not have an issue with a member of my cabinet, so a minister, and go publicly and question the minister. I couldn't do that. But in internal settings, yes, I would ask the questions that today now on the outside I ask of ministers, you know. So it's a different function, and totally. But indeed, the first 4 years was a learning process.
I think a lot of people only realize the power of the Prime Minister when we had that crisis in terms of Council of Ministers. Asking
indeed,
to dissolve Parliament.
Yeah. That's right, and that is a very sticky issue in our whole political makeup, because actually government and Parliament, strictly looking at it, you have the highest body, Parliament, the legislative body, highest body. Then you have the government. Parliament is to control the government. But then you have this political responsibility, and that is where ministers often feel that they can act independently for their ministry. Because if, let's take a minister of Vromi, for example. If something happens in Vromi, with Vromi, it's not a council of ministers that has to respond to Parliament. It is that minister needs to give account, needs to give information to Parliament, not a council of ministers. The council of ministers can't appear as a body in front of Parliament. So ministers understanding that and coming into 10-10-10, realizing that big difference between what we had as an executive and island council compared to a council of ministers and a Parliament. One of the fundamental difference in those two systems was the individual responsibility of a minister. We have ministers would say, council of ministers, I want to do this because I am the one who has to give account to Parliament. If Parliament has to issue a motion of non-confidence, it would be in one or more ministers, not in the council of ministers. It would be in one or more ministers. So the balance that I referred to earlier is that Parliament being able to say we no longer have confidence in a minister, and the possibility that the government can dissolve Parliament, you know, so that balance, that tension even more than balance is what came into play on more than one occasion during the first term of Country St. Martin.
But I think when it comes to the government dissolving Parliament, but the Council of Ministers here, I'm saying that so that people can understand.
Right,
that,
exactly.
The Prime Minister holds the key.
You know, the Prime Minister, yes, because the Prime Minister, while he or she is actually equal, the ministers are equal. the Prime Minister has some specific duties that gives him or her some more responsibility. For example, it is stated that the Prime Minister guards the unity of the government. So constantly, I as Prime Minister was trying to make sure that there was harmony amongst the ministers, amongst the ministries, because you are responsible for that unity. The Prime Minister would be the one co-signing a resolution or a decree to dissolve Parliament, you know. So yes, but the Prime Minister in our case does not have the kind of independent responsibilities like we have it in some other countries, where actually the Prime Minister, not in our case, but in some cases, decides who make up part of his or her cabinet. They are the ones who choose, but not in our case. There's a lot of politics involved in how our government is formed.
Now, when you look at the integrity issues and the Dutch government calling for integrity chamber, etc., how you feel about things right now for St. Martin?
Yeah, you know, I feel very very passionate about being able, having the opportunity within our own checks and balances to grow and learn as a country. And in that growing and learning, we're going to fall down sometimes, but there must be checks and balances that we have, that we trust, that will make sure that we're able to stand up again, and again, within the context of the law, move forward and grow as a country. The responsibility for integrity in government, of course you need to put certain things in place, otherwise it would go haywire, but it is a responsibility of the country St. Martin. And I believe that the Dutch government, in making the decisions that they did, and an issue that I had and still have a problem with, would be using an instrument like the office of the governor to do things that under no other circumstances would the Dutch government have been able to do with the other countries, because they use the same instrument in the case of Curacao and they used it in the case of St. Martin, you know, and it is not right for that to have happened. Our charter provides the possibility, if things really go rock bottom in the countries of the kingdom, what then the kingdom government can do. And so yeah, I have an issue with that kind of interference. That's what it is. And I still have.
You know, we are just about a little more than a week away from 100 days of this government. I think March 28th or 29th.
Yeah, around there, right.
Right. And still there are two ministries without a minister.
Yeah. No, that's a unheard of situation. It's an unheard of situation. I cannot, of course I can imagine, because I know the politics that are involved, but I cannot imagine the group that supports the government leaving a situation like this, allowing a situation like this to linger on. Don't tell me that all of those who support the government can't get together and have a completely formed government. This issue of one or more members of parliament who support the coalition making demands to have a minister or two ministers, and then that minister would be my minister as a member of parliament, or two members of parliament. It is not right. This government that is there currently came out and said all of this individual kind of posturing that we used to have, we're not having it anymore. This is collective. We are going to appoint ministers collectively. No one member of parliament or faction supporting the government should be able to say, this is my ministry and I am appointing the minister. while that is the way it is put on paper, that it will be collective, it will be done collectively, that is not the way it is turning out. Otherwise, collectively, could they not have decided who will fill those two positions for ministers?
Well, since you're a member of parliament, let me ask you, is there a problem? Because I understand there's a crisis right now again in government.
It is amazing. It is really amazing. And let me first state, Oral, I think that by not being open with the people of St. Martin, by not giving answers to the people of St. Martin, by allowing situations to fester, is what would bring these kind of rumors and speculations, you know, come out. Why can we not have the two ministers that are still lacking? Nobody says a word. Nobody come out and say, well, guys, you know, we're having an issue. We gave that particular portfolio to one of the coalition partners, and they can't find a minister, or they can't find a minister who we all can accept, but nobody's saying anything. Nobody is saying anything. And the question would be, why? We're not getting any answers. Nobody have an indication as to where this government wants to go with St. Martin. We were supposed to have a governing program within 60 days. By 60 days, if not earlier, nothing. And nobody says, well, give us a week more. We're coming with a governing program, but we're having some issues with the drafting. I don't know what it is. And then when the members of parliament who are in opposition become critical, then members of government get upset. But I mean, how could you have this kind of a situation on the island, nobody giving account, nobody seems to be in charge of what is happening, where we're going, and then you blame me if I find it necessary to question the government and say, what's happening? Where is your program? We have different institutions now probably not finding an ear by government, are saying we want to come and make a presentation to Parliament. We want to come and talk to Parliament about issues that we're having. And that's a good thing. Information is always a good thing. But where does government stand on these issues? To give you an example, Oral, the University of St. Martin has requested if they can come and make a presentation to Parliament. Nothing at all wrong with that request. I support it because, again, information is helpful, especially for those members of Parliament who might not have that inside knowledge of having been in an executive position, you know, so who were not ministers. We have new members of Parliament, so it will be good for them to hear from institutions like the university or other institutions. But what is government's position on the University of St. Martin? We don't know. So when we listen to the university come and present their plans, their ideas, their challenges to us, our first question is going to be, and what does government think? Where does government think that they would like to see the University of St. Martin? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. And so it goes for medical center. Medical center, a hot political issue during the campaign. Hot political issue. Today, members of Parliament over and over have asked, okay, what is going to happen? When are these urgent repairs going to take place to the St. Martin Medical Center? Nothing. All the big talk about expansion, are there plans there? How will they be financed? We don't know.
There are so many questions. I mean, also, when it comes to the SZV now, there's other allegation of selling cards, SZV cards. Is Parliament going to look into that? Or ask? Well,
if so you have where SZV itself came out and acknowledged that there is an issue and they're dealing with it. The minister came out and said there is an issue and government will deal with it. Parliament.
I'm sorry, is the SZV dealing with this with internal auditors or external auditors?
I don't know. You see? So members of parliament and the Democratic Party faction for sure, you look at it. You don't want to jump on everything the very first day. You give in, and this faction for sure has been given government some leeway, some flexibility. But when government refuses to answer, you're going to get questions again. You're going to get, discontentment expressed by members of parliament. So in the case of the SZV, for example, naturally, it is not nice what is being alleged, but apparently it has happened. How, by whom, by how many persons, we don't know. So we take the minister's word who said she's dealing with it. But at some point in time, Parliament and the people of St. Martin need to know what's happening. Because then again, you're going to get the rumors and the speculation come out. And I know you can't, if you're having an investigation, you can't come out during that investigation and divulge everything, but neither can you keep completely silent. So you give them, the institutions who first need to deal with it, that's the SZV itself, and government needs to have an eye out for it, and then Parliament needs to get into action and say, what's happening? We haven't heard anything. You were dealing with it, but what now? So that kind of monitoring and scrutinizing is a perfect role of Parliament.
St. Martin Housing Foundation, understand that that's one that's, according to people on the street, that will bring down this government. There've been a request for the foundation to appear before Parliament, behind closed doors, I understand.
Yeah.
That request was not honored by members?
There's the strangest of development with respect to that. Firstly, yes, Parliament had a meeting, and Parliament asked the board to come in and tell us what's happening, because there were so many rumors out there regarding, firstly, the suspension that turned out eventually to have been the dismissal of the managing director and suspension of some other staff members. Board said, no, we are not coming. We are not obligated to come to Parliament. The management came to Parliament. They explained their side of the story. Parliament asked government. So since the board is not responding to Parliament, then government, you have to give us the answers. What is happening? When we got those answers back then, basically government was nearly as clueless about that whole thing as Parliament was. So government could not, gave answers, yes, gave the answers, but we don't know. We understood that new board members are going to be appointed, etc., etc. And we reminded government and said, we haven't received answers on this situation. The strange thing about it is that when that meeting had to continue, the coalition did not give the meeting a quorum. The parties and factions and individuals supporting the government did not give the meeting of Parliament a quorum. So the meeting could not go ahead and needs now to be reconvened. And then if they don't show again, then a third time Parliament meets with whatever amount of members are present. But so what is that saying? What is government? Because government has a link with the members and the factions who support government. So so when Parliament then started to say what is happening here, then it should not surprise anyone. So that meeting didn't go ahead because there was no quorum. And the coalition parties did not provide a quorum for the meeting. So they don't want to have a meeting on the issue. Why not? And then you get a kind of speculations that you just referred to.
When it comes to education, I know you've been involved in education in government for a long time as Commissioner of Education. I always praise you for what you did with S4, because I think it was very, very important at the time for young St. Martiners going to study. I had recently some people from the education department to study finance. And when you listen to them, they're working hard, but then you realize that we have many students from St. Martin back here on the island walking around with degrees in hospitality and degrees in marketing. But then you have a government-owned company like TLM with their marketing manager not being from St. Maarten, but from the Netherlands. And you ask yourself, this is a government-owned company. The government of St. Maarten invested millions of guilders and dollars into the young people of St. Maarten. Can't we find no one in St. Maarten with a marketing degree to run the marketing department at a government-owned company?
Exactly. I mean, that would indeed be the question. And I think that's why, and this would then take us to a discussion on this much talked about and contentious issue of the counterpart, the counterpart policy of government. And one of the areas that government said this counterpart policy would alleviate or would help is the matter of our students studying abroad. I beg to differ. I think that a much better matching system should be possible for the jobs that are open at government-owned company and other places. And the matching should take place with our students who are studying in one or more of these areas. You know, and it should be known. It should be known so that our students or graduates, recent graduates, would know what the possibilities are. There is something that does not click where our labor market is concerned. Something that does not click. And we need to have the stats at our disposal to understand what is happening here. In terms of unemployment, who is unemployed, on what level, how does this relate to persons getting people from abroad to fill certain positions. So that's the overall picture, but otherwise than that, I think that government should be able to give some kind of direction to their government-owned companies, be it through their board, be it through management, because as you said, these are government-owned companies. But there is so seriously a lack of a general vision for this country overall. A vision that would include the empowerment of our young people. But it needs to be a collective vision, not only of government, not only government saying, you know, well, we would like our young people to be placed in positions and have the opportunity to move up in, you know, in their careers. It needs to be a collective vision of this country where we want to take St. Maarten.
When I look back at the late 70s, early 80s, you had people like Michael Ferry, Charlie Myers, Rudy Balboa, I go on naming all the people from this island that was involved in management in Muller Bay. I came back from the States at age 24, 25, was a duty manager at Muller Bay. Today, with all of these graduates walking around St. Maarten with degrees in hotel hospitality, and I didn't have a degree in hotel hospitality at the time, but I still was a part of management. Yeah. It's difficult to convince young people that they can have a future in St. Maarten when we are supposed to be the leaders in the Northeastern Caribbean, but our people can't find work in the hospitality industry where they have degrees and many degrees.
Yeah. And you see, and Oral, you know it, you have numbers, I know it, I have numbers, I hear numbers, I have my own assessment in terms of when you see things, when you talk to people. But what are the facts? What are the stats? How many of these persons, of our young people, are really walking around? What is their background? What is their study? You know what I'm saying? This information needs to be solid information that then government can take the right actions. And that's why I mentioned earlier, we need to have that information so that you can look at matching, so that you can look, why is it so what we perceive it to be? And how large scale is it? Because according to what information the Labor Office have, for example, the biggest chunk of persons seeking jobs are not our graduates, are not our college graduates, let me put it that way, but rather on the secondary level and just beyond that. This is the bulk of people, of young people looking for jobs.
And I think that information is correct there, because if you look at the school system and who are graduating, and if you look at the level today, very old classes are very, very small.
That's right.
They're going to soon disappear.
Academically, yeah. And on the other hand, Oral, it is also clear that technical and vocational expertise and training is very, very necessary. That is where others come to St. Martin and get jobs in those fields. So the change to our educational system to accommodate that is what resulted in the NIPA Institute, that institute there in Cahill. And you see the problems that they are having there right now. But that kind of education was to make sure that we produce the same kind of expertise and training that others come here and find the technical jobs.
Well, it looks like really we can't get things right these days. And I think, I don't know if you will agree, that the public of St. Martin now holds a very, very, very low opinion of politicians.
You know, it's, yeah. Because if we look at it, it should be alarming that not 100 days of a new government, and there is already or continues to be such a dissatisfaction. Usually, elections represent the will of the people. So you should have some type of goodwill from the election as a government that people feel, okay, these are the persons we elected, and and you get some support. Of course, they're going to wane off. You see that all over. You see it all over the world, because generally speaking, people expect a lot from their governments, and mostly the governments, because of all kind of constraints, cannot deliver. You try, you get certain things done, but you cannot deliver all of the expectations of the people. But at least after elections and a new government, the kind of a bit that should be there is not there in our case, Oral. It's not there in our case. One of the reasons could be that most of the persons on an executive level today, so ministers, are not persons who basically postulated themselves and the people could have voted for them, whether they voted in large numbers or not, but at least people have that rapport. That could be one of the reasons why you have the feeling that now permeates the community.
When you look at St. Martin today, and we're hearing all of the problems, every day there's a different rumor, there's a different ministry with a different problem. On the outside, this is not good for St. Martin.
Of course it's not, and the world, and St. Martin included, are not what they used to be, not even 10 years ago, let alone longer. Today, Oral, while we here engage in discussions on St. Martin within the Dutch Kingdom, everything that is said about St. Martin, or any other country for that matter, also those within the Dutch Kingdom, is magnified. It is magnified to the outside world. And we should be very cognizant of that. And even as individuals, the way that we deal with our country, we should also understand that fact. And again, there is no little playground here on St. Martin that is only of St. Martin, be it in politics, be it in social media. All of these things are actually global. They're global.
But do you think we have a stable government today in St. Martin?
I don't know. I don't know, Oral. Stable would mean that there is a common vision that everybody agrees to and will work collectively on. I don't have the impression that that's the case. I don't have the impression that that's the case.
Yeah, take a call for you. Oral Gibbs live on caller. Hello? You're on live, caller.
Good night.
Good night.
Honorable Member of Parliament, I would like to know what you and other parliamentarians who definitely are involved in government are doing to help St. Martin people in a tangible way. By that I mean, Peking is taking over this place. Bombay is taking over this. What about St. Martin? What about children? Our children? What is hurting the very poor and wiping the middle class out and having only the very rich and the very poor? I wouldn't like it to happen to...
Sorry. You there? Sorry, lost the call, yeah.
Yeah, caller, I understand your frustration. However, in your introduction, one of the things that you mentioned, which regrettably is not so. No, yeah, I am in Parliament and along with me, 14 other members, but my role in government, no, I don't have that role anymore. And the influence that you have in terms of policies of government, I don't have them. My role is one of opposition. Of course, I can ask government, what are you doing? What are you doing about this? What are you doing about that? But to say that I am able to change it, no, regretfully, that's not a makeup of our parliament or our government today.
It seems like people are, they're crying out for a change that will never happen. The past is gone. Mm-hmm. And there's a new reality in St. Martin, whether we want to believe it or not.
That's true. That is true. That is true. That is true. And again, Oral, I think that St. Martin can make progress. Of course, we can make progress. Of course, there is advancement to be made, but we need to know what it is that we want to do. Where do we want to go? Who is leading this country and towards what? Are we being led? That's a question. And I think that's the most frustrating thing. You make decisions and not everybody would agree. Not everybody would like the way you're going about certain things, but at least there should be a direction. Right now, government has not provided Parliament or the people of St. Martin with any direction, with any leadership.
What do you think is wrong when you look at St. Martin? Because St. Martin, to the average person that arrives on this island, is a very wealthy island. You drive up to Point Blanche, you see all the cruise ships, you go down to Simpson Bay, the airport, streets are busy, things look great, business looks great. Mm-hmm. And then you hear the native population, very, very upset and angry, and they've lost all confidence in the elected officials. What's wrong there?
Yeah, you know, Oral, as I said earlier, you'll always have dissatisfaction with politics. Why? Because people look at governments all over the world to do a lot of things.
This is the worst it's ever been.
And for St. Martin, because we are not accustomed of having to rearrange ourselves. We are not accustomed. with a government that has so many responsibilities, and basically we don't have the means as a government.
So you're saying the government is overwhelmed actually with all the different responsibilities that was brought on?
I think that's part of it. That's surely part of it. Look at the matter of our safety and security, Oral. You know, something that government had to take over, had to build up, and it is costly. Look at our overall health situation, very, very costly. You know, so yeah, we are faced with some serious challenges as a country.
Oral Gibbs live on caller. Hello.
Yeah, good evening, Oral.
Good evening, sir.
I've been listening to your guests, you know, and it really have me kind of puzzled because I am not a supporter of the new government. I'm not a supporter of the old government because none of them had any interest of the people of St. Martin. So now, Mrs. William now is finding all kind of faults. But those faults were there even in her administration, but time that she really accepted, you know, that everything that gone bad with St. Martin ain't taken place within the past 2 months. The politicians left St. Martin people down years ago. I am here for 14 years. And the government that we had one after the next, no matter how you turn it over, anybody look at it, that they try to say this, blaming everything now. Now, right now, everything is stink, but it was always stink. So we need to change the whole gang of them. I don't know where we will get people from, but we need the whole gang change, is my point of view. And I don't care who don't like me, what I say, but I am saying as a St. Martiner, we are heading for serious trouble. And talking and crying now about it, when it was always there, I do not see any good coming out of it.
Okay.
So let us really figure out a different way. Okay.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, caller. No, your opinion, like everyone else's, should be respected. I mean, no one should hate you for expressing your opinion. So that should not be held against you. Yeah, you know, you always hear this call for maybe we have had new people come into politics, come into government, and after a while you get the same dissatisfaction. So it's not as if everybody has been there forever. No, you have had changes. People call for new people. Yes, and you have had them. But again, it is not easy managing a country like St. Martin. And you are right, our problems are not of today. Have we made advances? You mightn't agree with me. I believe that at St. Martin, we have made advances. Is there still much work to be done? I believe there's still much work to be done. What we are talking about right now is the situation of government the way it is. Following an election, what should be considered fair and free election, you will think that people having expressed their desire for their representatives and the government of St. Martin not being fully formed, people don't know exactly what is happening. Of course, I as a member of parliament, I'm going to speak out. That's the role I have now, and I am going to carry out that role. And like you said, not everyone would like it, but that's what has to happen.
I think the public still can't distinguish between you as Prime Minister, former Prime Minister.
I know. It's. I don't want to say it's difficult, Oral, but again, I think, and especially in the beginning, surely
they're not accustomed to it. This is the first time they've experienced it.
Yeah, I know, and but I also think that people need to be aware of the system in which we live, and that's why I started out in the program by mentioning that period of time, because that I could imagine would have people totally confused. You're Prime Minister on one hand, and on the other hand, you're a member of parliament that could actually talk against the government of which you are part. So that was a very peculiar situation. not one that I wanted, but I needed to accept my responsibility and carry it out until a new prime minister was elected. But I think now, Oral, most people understand the difference as a member of parliament. And of course, in it all, you got detractors who, regardless to what I say or do, are going to be using that, you know. But I think that sufficient time has passed for people to understand that, yeah, I know I'm not your prime minister. No, I can't do anything about a minister. Only use my position as member of parliament to ask that minister or those ministers to give account.
I think people didn't realize that you mount such an effective opposition,
but
and that's surprising.
I guess that too, you know. And I always mention, Oral, I said one of the few times that I actually came out and spoke about an issue that was actually an internal matter, and where you had ministers standing on different sides of the fence on the issue, was in the case of the purchase of the forced land, because I had to come out. There was too much playing, and it was like, but what is the prime minister saying? Is she condoning this issue? So I had to come out and make it very clear that there we had an impasse. We had an impasse in government. But now everything is from Parliament side, from Parliament's perspective. Everything is public, and I need to execute this role.
Everything, almost everything, because the Brown Housing Foundation is not public. The public
yeah,
needs a public hearing on that.
But they decided they didn't come into Parliament.
All right, I'll take a call. Oral Gibbs Live and call. Hello. I think one of the good things that come out of this whole new arrangement since 10-10-10 is that the public now have an opportunity to see Parliament and to sit back, watch, listen to Parliament in terms of bringing in other people, whether it be ministers or community organizations, and I think that's a good part.
No, indeed, and again, it's about information as far as I'm concerned, and education. And when I say education, I mean educating the people of St. Martin to understand how this thing functions. The caller earlier mentioned, yeah, you know, we need as he called it, a new gang. Look how many new members we have in Parliament. You see what I'm saying, Oral? So, well, it ain't gonna be one or a few individuals that are going to change this, whatever it is that we are sensing to be wrong on St. Martin. No, it's going to be collectively we understanding.
But I think the impression created by this Parliament is like children in the schoolyard playing marbles, 15 players, and it's like, I want this marble, these are mine, this is that. It is unbelievable when you are aware of what's happening among members of Parliament and the influence peddling in relations to ministers. This is serious and this is wrong.
Yeah, and again, you were right. You said earlier it's going to take a while, and indeed it's going to, because even if we legislate, even if we dealt with a matter that was hot on the agenda of Parliament, the Parliament before, which was electoral reform, to kind of give it at least a sense of stability, you know, so that you don't get these constant crises. But I mean, you know, people gonna find a way to get around it, and so it's gonna be a learning process. I agree with you. It's going to take some time.
On the issue of public transportation licenses, you also request parliamentary hearing on that? And
yeah, not so much a parliamentary hearing, Oral, but there too. I mean, the stories that you hear, that I hear, that are the topic of the day, whether it's under the tree, whether it's wherever it is, the only way that you can combat those kind of things is to be open with the information. And that was basically my thrust in terms of public transportation. List the licenses. Why can't we know who all are taxi license holders, bus license holders for that matter. Why can't it be known? Why can't you have a list that people could find, that people could see? You know what I'm saying? Why isn't the in terms of, because of course the taxi industry being an area where you will always have more requests than you can responsibly give licenses for. So you need to have some kind of system according to which these licenses are given. The laws are there, but have they been followed? You know, have they been followed? If people put in a request for a license, they need to know what their chances are, what their chances according to the law, what their chances are. But this kind of not wanting to say and speculation abound is what has created the discontentment, and yeah, and this one in it for that, and you know, I mean, just let everybody know, and then people could judge based on information rather than what you pick up here, you pick up there, because you pick it up, I pick it up, everybody pick it up.
And, a lot of people asking questions and calling.
I know.
And you're more knowledgeable than everyone else. Are you going to make any predictions? You think we might end up in a situation where we might have to have new elections in St. Martin before the end of this year?
Whoa. You really never know. It is not impossible. Again, for you to have new elections, Parliament would have to be dissolved. That would mean that government would have to dissolve Parliament. Government can only do that when there is a crisis and there is a crisis that apparently can't be solved, you know, so you can't get another makeup of a government.
But it seems like we have that right now. And you mentioned earlier, there are two ministries without a minister. There's infighting among members of Parliament with regards to who they're going to have as their minister, etc. That's, of course, approaching a crisis.
Well, you know, and
in my sense.
Well, if those members then start to make all kind of funny moves, and then because the crisis itself would only be there if the balance that we have now, which is actually a 10-5 situation, is being disturbed.
Do you think we're governing right now? Do you think St. Martin is being governed the way things are going?
Well, unless the government comes out and says, guys, this is what we're doing, and what you're doing is fine, but with what purpose and objective? And unless the government comes out and say that and explain that, I can't answer. Like I mentioned, Oral, there are some things that are pending and urgent.
But the Prime Minister can't function right now because the Prime Minister is saying he's not signing anything unless there's a Minister for Promi. That's not governing.
Oh, then that would. But that isn't right either, because you can't hold up governing. So not dealing with VROMI, for example, if that is the case, not dealing with VROMI matters because the minister has not been put in place yet. Well, then get the minister put in place. It's not up to me to put a minister in place. It's exactly that circle there. The Prime Minister and those who support him in office are responsible to also put the other ministers in place, the two who have not yet been appointed.
I only have about 20 seconds or other time in closing.
No, but then thank you, Oral. And again, it's not a good feeling what we have right now on St. Martin, and we need to be able to talk about it.
Thank you, and much success.